Yo, peace. MC Shawn Love, or as they know me in the beat making world, Metal Gear Solid Beats, yo. What's up? It's been a while since I did a beat video, but today we got a big video for y'all, you know what I mean? So if you want to fast forward to like 4 or 5 minutes before the video ends and you can see us making a beat, because we're going to make a whole beat today, start to finish, using only the SP-1200 and a turntable and a mixer. That's it, that's all. So if you need lessons on how to make real hip-hop beats, dope beats, if you want to know how to use the SP-1200 to see how it works, or see how we make beats like that with only 10-second sampling time, this is the place to be. Alright, first I'm going to start by giving you some background on Metal Gear Solid Beats. After that, I'm going to start delving into a little bit of, beat philosophy and the whole philosophy behind Metal Gear Solid Beats. And after that, we're going to make our track. But anyway, if you want to use Metal Gear Solid Beats and I haven't shook your hand and gave you a pound, or if I don't know you personally, you gotta pay. And you ask anybody that knows me, I don't need your dub to lease a beat. I don't need your $100 for exclusive rights. But I'll tell you one thing, I believe in quality control. So if if I'm sitting here with these beats machines and everything and I'm making these, I don't want whack MCs on my beats because I can rhyme, you know what I mean? So unless you're like 100% as dope as S-Love, then don't send me your files talking about, look how dope I am, because I'll just rhyme it all over myself, you know what I mean? So if you want to get down, if you want some real hip-hop beats, you got to show me that you want them by giving me the minimum amount of $20 for a lease. You couple them together with a couple other beats, you can get a good deal, or you got to pay exclusive rights. It's a little over 100. So just to let you know what time it is on the beats, you got to buy. We need to get started and talking about beat philosophy. You know what I mean? It's been a while since I've been making beats, and when we started out making beats, when I learned from a lot of the local masters, growing up in the Trenton area of New Jersey. And what we used to use primarily was use the SP-12, then the SP-1200 in like the late 80s. And after that, we started using the MPC-60. And you're going to see a lot of people from different countries that are now picking up on our skills, and they're picking up on our methods of making beats with vinyl. And you don't see that much in America. You see like MIDI control devices like the Machine, or like the MPC makes one, and Kai makes a MIDI control device. There's tons of them out there. Keyboards, Reason, different multitude of different programs that producers are using nowadays. And I submit that you got to be a real skilled producer to make hip-hop beats on these machines. Like I've said, I've tweeted before that Divine Drummer makes phenomenal beats using these machines, but most producers I know that make hip-hop beats, and I don't know too many, that's why I didn't list a whole bunch of people. Most producers that make beats on those machines, they're disposable. They're using drum kits. They're not using real samples. They're not digging. They're playing keys, but they're playing them bad because they don't know how to play the keyboard. They're not real musicians. So back in the 80s and the 90s, if we're not real musicians, we sample real musicians. So you're going to be hearing real instruments played in a way that that sounds harmonic and that sounds ill. And I'm noticing that a lot of producers the last 10 years have been using this different type of equipment, these programs. And philosophically, if the RZA couldn't afford it in 1990, if the RZA couldn't afford it, then I don't want to use it. If the RZA had to read a book this big to try to figure out how to use it, and had to go online and go into chat rooms and go on forums to try to figure out how to make it work, I don't want to use it. If a kid that's 17, 18, 19 years old that can't get $500 or $600 together and can't make a beat out of whatever equipment he can buy with that, I don't want to use it, because that's not how hip-hop is made. Hip-hop's not made in pristine studios. Hip-hop is not made by people that can afford anything. Hip-hop is basically pots and pans. So if you had an SP-1200, if you had an SP-12, if you had an Akai MPC, it's like you were rich back in the day. So you made the beats because you hustled to get that equipment, or you found a way to get it, right? But if you got a whole studio full of stuff, and that's how you're starting out, like in your parents' house, you're starting out with the wind at your back like that, you're not going to have the soul to make real hip-hop beats. And if you make some that some people like, congratulations, but people got bad taste nowadays. So I submit that the new school way of doing hip-hop beats, isn't really the real way. And there's an argument to be made for it. There's an argument to be made that this new type of equipment where you got to connect to a computer and this and that and have all these programs and learn how to use it, there's an argument to be made that there's good hip-hop made on those machines. But let me tell you something, there's no argument to be made against the stuff that I use, which is the SP-1200, the MP60. You can't argue that that's hip-hop music, because that's where it started, that's the foundation. So if you don't know how to use those machines, if you never touched one, if you never banged a drum pad or anything, then you're behind. You're behind. You didn't learn the basic ABCs. You don't know the foundation. You don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter what you show me. If you're getting sound kits, if you're using, you know, kits and sounds that have been created by huge companies that produce these catalogs of sounds, then you're not making hip hop the way that we started out making hip hop. You're not doing a variation of hip hop. You're doing something entirely different. So God bless you. It's awesome that you're doing what you're doing, but you're not doing hip hop music. I stick to this by definition. You know what I mean? And all we're gonna use today is strictly the SP-1200. Boom. And see, I'm gonna show y'all how to use this. What you gotta do basically is you gotta have a disc inside it. You gotta have a boot disc that has the program inside the SP-1200. You can't just start it without the disc. And that disc really only saves enough sounds for you to have 10 seconds of sampling time and your sequences, of course. And right here I got the mixer hooked up with the 16-inch channel. And the reason I got that, or 8-inch channel, I only need 8, and that's the outputs, right? And you put the outputs from the SP-1200, you put them into here so you can mix your sounds. Maybe give it a little bit of reverb, bass, treble. Control the highs manually with your hands because that's how it's done, you know? And then this is the mixer, lousy mixer, right? The Newmark mixer and a Newmark turntable, which isn't the best, but it gets the job done, right? And the only thing we're going to be doing today to make beats is we're going to be using records, all right? Now, I only got 10 seconds of sampling time. So in order for me to make a fresh beat, I got to make sure that I'm picking the sounds. I got to make sure that I'm preserving the best part of the record for myself, and I'm putting everything together so that way it sounds fresh and I'm creating something new. You should be able to recognize the records that I'm using when you're hearing my beat, but you should also be able to hear something that's entirely different that wasn't there when I started, something new that I created in my arrangement. Otherwise, I'm just stealing it. Otherwise, I'm just looping up stuff. I'm Puff Daddy, you know what I mean? So the first thing I do when I got my SP-1200 set up and ready, what I want to do is I want to sample. I usually start with I usually start with all these down, right? And I put these two up, and there's a real reason for that. That's how you get started on an SP-1200, because when you do your editing, you're going to be doing them with these, right? This is going to be the beginning of a sample if you want to take big chunks out. This is going to be taking chunks out of the sample if you want to take little pieces off and just shave off parts. And this is the end of the sample, right? So if you want to cut off the end of the sample in big chunks, you move this down a lot. And if you want to cut it off in like little hairs and shave it down, you're going to use this. And this is basically how you control your truncating in the SP-1200. Everything here is done with menus. And even the functions you don't see here, if you go into setup, you press setup function, you press 23, and it gives you a whole other list of different setup functions. The sample button is of course in red, and if you notice, my SP-1200 has been modified. I got the backlit ice blue screen, you know what I mean, which doesn't come standard. This is the battery. It's not battery powered. It's powered by something that doesn't overheat like the original SP-12s and turbos did, and the original SP-1200 overheated. This is the reissue with the better power supply, and this baby is in mint condition. Usually these lights will be red, but I had them replaced with blue LEDs, you know what I mean? So anyway, we're gonna get started. We press sample, and there's a whole menu of numbers here, right? And every time you want to take a sample, you press 2, and you decide what pad you're gonna take it onto. There's 8 pads, and there's 4 different banks. And when you decide what you're gonna do, you press enter. So if I want to take it into, say, pad D8, right? D8, D bank, pad 8, I press enter. I got to choose which channel it's going out of. And unlike some machines, that's an important choice because some channels sound different than others. So in 8, it might be bassier. I usually take all my main samples through channel 7. I take my hi-hats through channel 6, and those get transferred right over here into this machine, so I can even further check out the sound and listen to it and decide how I want it mixed. All right? Once you decide on your channel, you want to decide using your slider 1, you want to decide, you know, when do you want it to start sampling? You want it to just sample anything, you leave it at the bottom. But if you want to, you know, make sure that it's hitting a certain volume before the sample starts taking, you bring up your threshold. 5, you use your slider to decide how long you want your sample to be. This machine's only got 10 seconds in it, so I take samples short. You know, I might take a 0.8 second sample because I need to preserve my sampling time. I got to truncate and chop everything. And when I'm ready to take my sample, I either press 7 to arm my sample, and it'll start sampling as soon as the sound that's being put in through the sample in goes over that threshold that I set, or you could press 9 to just start sampling. And, you know, anytime it starts sampling, no matter what's coming into the machine. You got to be careful though. If it goes into red, it'll overload. So let's take a look at our records. I'm gonna start off with something I was listening to the other day. This is Ahmad Jamal from the album Tranquility, right? And I'm in California right now. Y'all know I'm from Jersey, but I'm in California right now. And in North California, they got tons and tons of record stores. So, you know, I've been just beefing up my collection. Just since I got here, I bought mad records, you know? and I really like this sound. The problem with the SP-1200, I wouldn't say problem, but actually what gives us this sound is like if you speed up this record, you can obviously take the sample in a lot faster and slow it down. And that's what gives the already gritty 12-bit engine that it got in here, that's what gives it its super grit, right? So I'm going to listen to the sound that I liked the other day. I'm going to rock this and see how it's going to sound when I play it. It's real slow, so I'm going to be compromising by taking a slow sample. Even if I speed it up, it's slow. There's a piece in here I really loved. Yeah, it's different than people messing with keyboards, man. These were geniuses. These were musicians that had soul. So when you take a little piece of their music, or I should say borrow it, to create something of your own, a collage of your own, you're taking from geniuses. You're not taking from a keyboard company that stocked up a piece of plastic with sounds. And you're using Metal Gear. These old machines were made primarily with metal on the inside. That's why we call it Metal Gear, you know? See, that's how it sounds when I slow it down. Alright, so I got my main sample. See, it's nice and bassy. I adjusted it in here so to sound bassy, and now I need some other sounds to complement that, right? Before I start getting into drums, and I've already used 4.2 seconds of my sampling time, so I'm already almost half done with my time that I got left in this machine, and I only just started the song. So what I want to do is I want to get one of those real, like, those orchestraic sounds in there, those 1960 sounds that kind of remind you of, like, listening to the orchestra, and I want it to be real dramatic. I don't want it to sound fresh. And so I found this record here, Skitch Henderson, Sweet Charity, and I'm going to find I only got a little bit of time, so I'm going to be careful about how much I take, but I heard this the other day and I loved it, and I think that'll fit perfect with it. Let's hear it. I'm going to have to take it faster than this. That's it. That's it. That's all. I'm going to take those two little notes, I'm going to put them in this machine, I'm going to slow them down. Got them in the machine, I slowed them down. Let's see how they sound now. I need them slower. How would that sound over that sample that I took from before? Alright. Now I need some drums. And I'm hurting because I only got about 3 seconds of sampling time left. So anything I take, any drums, any extra effects I take, anything I want to put in for a chorus, I only got 3 seconds. Now this is the time a lot of other producers would be like sorting through and browsing through their sound kits that they bought off the internet so they could find some dope drums. And what I do at this time is I just keep listening to records. So I'm going to take a classic break. A producer like me or a lot of the other people that I know from back in the day, we have breaks in our head, so we know the names of the songs that have these breaks already. If we want a horn, we know the musicians that played the horn well. If we want a flute, we know that Herbie Mann's got flutes, So by doing this, I'm not only making tracks of my own, I'm not just stealing other people's sounds, but what I'm doing is I'm educating myself about music history and about the musicians that played these instruments, right? So I know who I can count on. And right now I'm feeling like this sound would do a little good with that Get Out of My Life Woman drums. And I'm going to play it real fast, see if that'll sound right. Alright, you heard that? What I want to do is I want to take those drums, plus I want to hear that boom, that bass sound. But listen to some Black Sheep records. Listen to some records from the 90s. A lot of times their drum patterns wouldn't start with the kick, it would start with the snare. There's a reason for that. Because in like less than a second, I could take basically what could be a whole drum loop. But what I want to do is I want to double the snare up. I sampled it twice, so I have it over here too. Unless I want to, if I want to be creative, right? And I got that bass sound that I loved. What else do I got? Took the hi-hat, right? Okay, and now I've got 0.8 seconds left, and I got to get a chorus out of 0.8 seconds. What the heck am I going to do? Now when I hear this sound, I hear like a lady screaming over it or singing over it, something soulful, I already got my horns in here. Gwen McCrae, Rockin' Chair. It's a dope record. The whole thing is dope. But it's one song on here that I remember. There's like a little piece where her singing without much instrumentation in the background, like real soulful. And I'm gonna play it for you now. And this is what I'm gonna take to make my chorus. Yeah, now this is the same record that was used by Boss, you know, and I think Mobb Deep used it later. But that's not the track that I want. That's 90% of Me Is You. I want It's Worth the Hurt, because that's just got the nice little singing piece in it without the instruments. I gotta find it. She's saying love with, and she's about to get into something else, but I only had 0.8 seconds, right? So I want to make that sound like word life. Word life. Word. The SP-1200 is a weird beast, and the fact that there's only so many little slits that you can stick sounds. So normally you'd be doing like a track, if it's a hip hop track, anywhere from like, you know, I don't know, 75 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute, somewhere in that area, usually more close to 90, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my tempo to like 180, because if you double the beats per minute on SP-1200, there's more little slots for you to throw your samples into, and so there's a lot more room that you have to give it that swing that only SP-1200s have, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loop up all of the samples before I start programming my drum. Get those horns in, you know what I mean? Now I want to put them drums in. How you love that? Hear that bass? That bass that we sampled? And anything dope has got to break down, you know? Let's bring it to the chorus, right? Word life. There you have it, y'all. You know, spreading this culture around and really letting people know that it's still there, and letting the kids know that you know, this is something that started us out, and the techniques still exist. You know, the knowledge is still there. The way that we do this is still accessible to you. You know what I mean? This is hip hop music, man. You know what I mean? Metal Gear Solid beats. Get at your boy. Peace.